Bill Gates owns more farmland than anyone in America, 270,000 acres. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway holds over $100 billion in liquid assets, but also owns railroads, utilities, and energy infrastructure. Ray Dalio has been telling anyone who will listen to own gold for the past 5 years. Meanwhile, the average person is being told to put their money in a 401k, trust the stock market, and save for retirement in dollars. Why the disconnect? Why are the people who understand money better than anyone doing the exact opposite of what they are telling you to do? Because they know something. They know that when the reset comes, when the system finally breaks, only 3 types of assets survive. And they're positioning themselves accordingly. By the end of this video, you'll understand the survival portfolio, the 3 categories of wealth that carry you through monetary collapse, and the exact strategy to move your wealth from the simulation into reality before time runs out. This is the final piece. Everything we've covered in this series has led here. Now let me show you what actually survives. The first rule of the survival portfolio is simple. You cannot eat, drink, or live inside paper promises. When currencies collapse, when systems reset, when the mathematical walls we discussed finally hit, the first thing that becomes clear is the difference between real and fake. Real is what you can touch, use, and cannot create with a keystroke. Fake is everything else. Let me break this down into the 3 categories that matter. Category 1, hard assets that cannot be printed. The original form of money, the asset that survived every empire, every currency, every reset in human history. Gold. Gold is not an investment. It's insurance. It's the asset you hold when you don't trust the system. When you recognize that paper promises are only as good as the institution making them. Here's what most people misunderstand about gold. They think it appreciates. It doesn't. Gold is constant. An ounce of gold today buys roughly the same amount of real goods it bought 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, even 2,000 years ago. What changes isn't gold. What changes is the currency. The dollar loses value. Gold stays the same, which makes it look like gold is going up when really the dollar is going down. This is why central banks are buying gold at record rates. Russia bought 600 tons in the last 3 years. China has been accumulating for over a decade. Even Western central banks that claimed gold was a barbarous relic are quietly rebuilding reserves. They know what's coming. They're preparing for a world where dollar dominance ends, where currency trust evaporates, where the only universally accepted store of value is the one that's been money for 5,000 years. But gold has one limitation. You can't eat it. You can't live in it. You can't use it to produce anything. It's pure wealth storage. This is where the second hard asset becomes critical. Silver. Silver is gold's productive cousin. It's used in electronics, solar panels, medical devices, water purification. It has industrial demand on top of monetary demand. The gold to silver ratio has historically been around 15 to 1. 15 ounces of silver equal 1 ounce of gold. Right now, that ratio is closer to 80 to 1. This means silver is either dramatically undervalued or gold is dramatically overvalued. Given that industrial demand for silver is growing while new supply is limited, the bet is that silver catches up. But more importantly, silver is accessible, gold is expensive, an ounce costs over $2,000, silver is $25. For most people, accumulating silver is more practical than accumulating gold. Between gold and silver, you're holding assets that cannot be printed, cannot be devalued by policy, and have been recognized as money across every civilization in history. But hard assets alone aren't enough, because wealth isn't just about storage, it's about production. Category 2, productive assets that generate value, regardless of currency. This is where the billionaires are really positioning, not just in wealth storage, but in production control. Land, specifically productive land, farmland, timberland, resource-rich land. Bill Gates didn't buy 270,000 acres of farmland because he wants to be a farmer. He bought it because land is the original Bitcoin. It cannot be created. It cannot be copied. It cannot be inflated away. And productive land generates value regardless of what happens to currency. Farms produce food. Forests produce timber. Mines produce resources. The output has value whether you're trading in dollars, yuan, gold, or seashells. When currencies reset, the people who own the production survive. The people who own paper, claims on production get wiped out. Think about Weimar Germany. When hyperinflation hit, who survived? Not the people with savings accounts, not the people with bonds. The people who owned farms, who owned factories, who owned real businesses that produced real goods. Their nominal wealth in marks became worthless, but their productive capacity remained. And when the new currency was introduced, they still owned the assets that generated value. This is why the ultra-wealthy are accumulating real estate, infrastructure, utilities, transportation networks. These are assets that produce value and generate cash flow independent of monetary conditions. Energy infrastructure is particularly strategic. People need electricity regardless of economic conditions. Water utilities are essential. Transportation networks are critical. Own the infrastructure and you own the flow. You collect a toll on economic activity itself. But land and infrastructure require capital most people don't have. So the third category is the most accessible and potentially most valuable. Category 3, skills and knowledge that create value. This is the asset nobody can take from you. Nobody can devalue with policy. Nobody can inflate away. When systems collapse, the people who survive are the people who can do things, who know things, who create value with their hands and minds. Plumbers, electricians, mechanics, farmers, doctors, teachers, people with skills that are needed regardless of monetary conditions. During the Great Depression, the people who stayed employed were the ones who provided essential services. The ones who could fix things, build things, heal things, teach things. Paper wealth evaporated, but skill-based wealth remained valuable because it created real value. This is why education and practical skills is the most underrated investment. Learning to grow food, to repair equipment, to build structures, to provide medical care, to teach others. These skills are currency independent. They're valuable in any system. And unlike financial assets, they appreciate with practice rather than depreciate with time. But skills have a limitation. They require your time and energy. You can't scale skills the same way you can scale capital assets. This is where knowledge becomes critical. Not academic knowledge, practical knowledge about systems, markets, opportunities, the ability to see patterns, to recognize value before others, to understand how money works, how power flows, how systems operate. This is the knowledge that allows you to navigate resets, to identify opportunities during chaos, to position yourself advantageously when others are paralyzed by fear. Warren Buffett's real wealth isn't his stock portfolio. It's his understanding of value, his ability to recognize mispriced assets, his knowledge of how systems work and where opportunities hide. That knowledge has generated billions across multiple market cycles, multiple crises, multiple decades. Because knowledge adapts, knowledge learns, knowledge compounds. So the three categories: hard assets that cannot be printed, productive assets that generate value regardless of currency, and skills and knowledge that create value independent of systems. Now let me show you how to actually implement this, because knowing what to do and doing it are different things. The implementation strategy is simple: diversification across time and categories. You can't go all in on gold tomorrow and call it done. You can't buy a farm next week unless you already have significant capital. You can't learn 10 skills simultaneously. This is a process, a gradual shift from paper wealth to real wealth, from system dependence to system independence. Start with what's accessible. For most people, that's silver. You can buy an ounce of silver for $25. Start accumulating every paycheck. Convert some portion of your paper money into physical metal. Not all of it. You still need liquidity for daily life, but some portion. 10%, 20%, whatever you can afford to put into long-term storage. As silver accumulates, transition some into gold. When you have 50 ounces of silver, trade them for 1 ounce of gold. The ratio makes sense. The storage becomes easier. The wealth density increases. Simultaneously, invest in skills. Not by going back to school for another degree, by learning practical things. Take a welding class, learn carpentry. Study permaculture, understand mechanical repair. Even if you never use these skills professionally, they're insurance, they're optionality, they're tools in your arsenal when systems break. And while you're building skills, study knowledge, read financial history, understand monetary systems, learn how resets actually play out, what happens in the transition, who survives, who doesn't, why. This knowledge positions you to take advantage of opportunities during the chaos, because resets aren't just destructive, they're also wealth transfer events. And if you understand the patterns, you can be on the receiving end instead of the losing end. As your hard assets and skills accumulate, if you have capital, start looking at productive assets. This doesn't mean buying a farm unless you want to farm. It means looking for income-generating real assets. Rental properties if you understand real estate. Small businesses if you understand operations. Resource royalties if you understand commodities. The key is productive capacity. Assets that generate value regardless of monetary conditions, that produce cash flow you can reinvest, that appreciate with inflation instead of being destroyed by it. And through all of this, reduce system dependence. Get out of debt. Debt is a claim on your future productivity denominated in currency that's being devalued. Paying off debt is a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate. If your mortgage is 6%, paying it off is a 6% guaranteed return that cannot be taxed or inflated away. Build liquidity outside the banking system, not by stuffing cash under your mattress, but by holding assets that can be converted to cash when needed without requiring bank approval. Physical gold and silver can be sold locally. They're liquid without being in the financial system. They're wealth you control directly without intermediation. And finally, build community. The people who survive resets aren't lone wolves. They're connected individuals with networks, relationships, mutual support systems. Find people who understand what's coming, who are preparing, who have skills and knowledge you don't. Build relationships based on mutual benefit and shared awareness. Because when systems break, community becomes currency. Trust becomes wealth. Relationships become survival infrastructure. Now let me address the elephant in the room. What about stocks? What about retirement accounts? What about the traditional financial advice everyone gives? Here's the truth. Traditional investments work in stable systems. When you trust the currency, trust the institutions, trust that tomorrow looks like yesterday, stocks and bonds make sense. But we're not in a stable system. We're in late-stage debt cycle approaching mathematical collapse. Traditional investments are denominated in the currency that's being debased. They're held in institutions that are counterparties in a failing system. This doesn't mean abandon them entirely. It means rebalance, reduce exposure, diversify into assets that survive resets. If you have a 401k, you can't usually buy gold directly, but you can reduce stock exposure and increase cash temporarily, then systematically convert that cash into physical assets outside the system. If you have investments, take profits when they're up. Convert those profits into real assets. Don't reinvest paper gains into more paper assets. Convert paper into real. The goal isn't to get rich. The goal is to preserve wealth through the transition and position for opportunities on the other side. Because here's what history teaches. Resets destroy paper wealth, but they create massive opportunities for people with real assets and clear understanding. After Weimar, the people who survived bought assets from desperate sellers at pennies on the dollar. After the Soviet collapse, oligarchs grabbed state assets for nothing. After every crisis, prepared individuals acquired decades' worth of wealth in months. This isn't about taking advantage of suffering. It's about understanding that resets redistribute wealth. And you can either be on the losing side or the winning side of that redistribution. The losing side holds paper and hopes. The winning side holds real assets and knowledge. So where do you start? Today, right now, not tomorrow, not next month, not after you finish researching or planning or thinking. Today, you convert some portion of your paper wealth into your first piece of real wealth, an ounce of silver, a practical skill course, a book on financial history, small action, but action. Because the window is closing. We're in stage 4 approaching stage 5. The mathematical wall of 2027 is approaching, and when stage 5 hits, when the crack-up begins, there won't be time. The banks will close, the currency controls will be imposed, the assets will be unavailable, your preparation happens in calm, your survival happens in chaos. You cannot prepare during the chaos. You can only act on preparation made before. This is the final message of this entire series. History repeats because human nature doesn't change. Debt cycles follow predictable patterns. Resets happen, currencies die, systems break. But individuals who understand the patterns, who prepare accordingly, who position in real assets instead of paper promises, these individuals navigate the transition and thrive on the other side. You've watched 10 episodes, you've seen the pattern, you understand the architecture, you know what's coming. The only question left is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you dismiss it? Hope it's wrong? Wait and see? That's what most people do. And most people lose everything. Or will you act? Will you start converting paper to real? Will you build skills? Will you accumulate knowledge? Will you position for what's coming instead of hoping it doesn't? The choice is yours. History doesn't care what you choose. It just unfolds according to mathematical laws and human patterns. But you care. Your family cares. Your future cares. So make the choice that preserves and protects what matters. If this series changed how you see money, wealth, and systems, leave a comment with these words: paper burns, real remains. Share this entire series with people who need to understand. Because the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money. It's the knowledge that protects them from losing everything. History has the answers. I've shown you where to look. Now you decide where to go. Thank you for watching Finance Through Time. The patterns are clear. The choice is yours.